Welcome, everybody. We're thrilled that we're at a place where we can all gather together and talk about moving forward after these many, many weeks of sheltering at home. So it's good to see all of you. On the event description in L2, you'll see a lot of added documents. There's an agenda, there are reopening plans, there's the results of the survey we recently conducted with our membership, as well as Susan's delivery memo. So anything we reference today, you will be able to access. So don't worry about any of that. I'm going to, if you have questions during the meeting, please enter them in the chat that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And we will monitor that chat and pass that along to the presenters. During the meeting, as Troy said, please stop your video, and if you can, mute your mics unless you need to speak. That will make it all go all the more smoothly. And after each presenter goes through their session or their remarks, I will monitor the chat and pass those questions along to the presenter. So with that being said, I'm happy to turn this over to our director, Leslie Bednar, who'd like to really formally welcome you all.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm hoping you can. Thank you all for attending. Thanks, Ellen. We heard earlier, right before we started, that we had 194 folks registered. So I'm hoping that we can get all of you in. I know some of you will slowly show up as we get going. And we're, again, as Ellen mentioned, we're so happy to have you all here with us today. And where I'm sitting anyway, the sun's shining. So I hope at some point today, the sun will be shining where you are as well. I have the easy task today of extending a thank you to our staff who are on camera now and off, those who put the session together and who will help it run as seamlessly as possible for us today. In addition, we extend warm thank yous to our gracious guest presenters. We have with us today Greg McCormick, the director of the Illinois State Library. We have Diane Foote, the executive director of the Illinois Library Association. And then in a panel discussion, we will have Bobby Perryman, who's the director of the Vespasian Warner Public Library District in Clinton, Amy Byers, the director of the Chatham Area Library District, and Diana Brawley-Sussman, the director of the Carbondale Public Library. You've probably heard this before. I bet you hear it almost every day, that these are extraordinary times. And I know that all of us have been tested in similar ways in the past, perhaps not to this degree. And I've been thinking about this as we are approaching, as an organization, IHLS, we are approaching the end of our 9th year. And I've been thinking about the opportunities that our collective library community in Central and Southern Illinois, these opportunities, or AKA challenge, have faced before we were a super library system and since. And we all know, and we've definitely seen in our past, just in our last 9 years, that collective voices and power provide much more strength than those of individuals. And I really, truly, wholeheartedly believe that we are better working together than we are separately, and that our members, in just the last 2 months, have demonstrated this in spades. I've noticed in our the Members Matter meetings that we have now twice a week, the conversation, the level of conversation, and the openness that our members are sharing information with each other on our directors listserv, and the conversations that I know that directors are having and members are having with each other offline, by phone, or however you're all connecting. I can tell by the level of interaction that our members are going well beyond our normal levels of interaction and helping each other out. That is so, that's so genuine, and it's so warm, and it's so real. And well, it's nice to say that, well, we would always be that way. I think that this time that we're in as a as a community in our environment, it is so appreciated by everyone. And I think that's what distinguishes maybe all of us together. Maybe it's our culture, maybe it is the type of work that we do. And I also believe that once some libraries who are not yet open, and definitely in our libraries that are providing services, I know that patrons are appreciating that, and they can tell that. And so I want to thank all of you who are engaging in providing services now. And I know that electronic services are counting, although you may not be interacting in a personal way yet with your patrons. They're receiving those services. And I know that once you open to more interactive services with your patrons at any level, they're going to feel that, and they're going to appreciate that so much because of the kind of work that you do and the kind of people that you are. They're going to be so much better for it because of the kind of people that you all are. Also, I'm encouraged by the level of cooperation and camaraderie that we see on a larger level maybe at the state level, maybe even beyond that, at a more maybe not a national but a larger regional level. Our colleagues from the State Library, the Illinois Library Association, our colleagues at our sister library system, Reaching Across Illinois Library System, or RAILS, and at the Chicago Public Library, we do meet on a regular basis in different configurations. And the type of information that we are sharing on a daily, sometimes even hourly basis, it's very good quality information, and we pass that along to you as much as possible, and we incorporate it in our plans as an organization, as well as the presentations that we make for you, that we present to you. So all of this sharing and all of this communication does add up to, I hope, a better, like I said, a better community in general. And again, we're happy to be here with all of you today, for all of you today. Again, at the end of today's session and throughout, there are opportunities for you to ask questions. We have the chat feature at the bottom. Someone is going to be monitoring that. I know we have staff that are taking care of that. And you will have opportunities at the end of today's session. It's built in to ask questions. We have a lot of information we're going to be throwing at you, so to speak. So please feel free, jot down your notes, put them in the chat, and we will answer as many of those as we possibly can. Thank you. And I think it's back to Ellen.
It is, Leslie. Thank you very much. And Greg McCormick, Director of the State Library, we'll turn it over to you for an update on what we need to know from your offices.
Well, good morning, everyone. Greetings from the State Library, greetings from Secretary of State and State Librarian Jesse White. Echoing what you said earlier, Ellen, it's good to see everyone here together today, talking about this topic as we move forward with reopening plans, extending services. And certainly it can't go unnoticed that to the extent possible, libraries have done everything that they could to continue providing some services during this extraordinary time for our state and actually our country as a whole. And certainly we acknowledge that. It's been great, as Leslie says, to cooperate with the library systems, the Library Association, in sharing of information that we hope has been disseminated effectively to the library community. I wanted to share some very specific things about what has occurred in recent weeks, what will be occurring, things that will impact libraries, may impact some of your reopening plans even as well. So first and foremost, I think that we must mention what has occurred with the legislature last week. They did come to Springfield and meet. The budget did pass. Of note and interest, I think, for everyone is that the Secretary's request for libraries and literacy programs did pass through the legislature. We're now waiting the governor's approval on the entire state budget. We understand that in addition to the Secretary's request, there may be some direct appropriations for individual libraries that will go through our agency and other state agencies, and we are still in the process of compiling what those appropriations may be. In recent weeks, and because of this situation, we acknowledge that it's really changed many operations, obviously, at the local public library level, school libraries, academic libraries, etc. And that necessitated our office to make some changes within administrative rules on what is expected of libraries. I think this information has gone out to everyone, but we want to reiterate this a little more closely. First of all, that this certification process, the annual certification process for membership into library systems for 2021 was suspended on April 6th of 20. That was actually after the due date, but that was simply the process for the administrative rule change of typically March 31, but we would have been following up with libraries at that point to assure that was done. It doesn't change anyone's status in library system membership. If you were a member, you will retain that. It just was obvious that that was not going to be possible to follow through with this year. That process will return well, I should say it was suspended for 2020. It will return in 2021. The Public Library Construction Act grant program, which there are likely some applicants on this Zoom or within this Zoom meeting today. There was, or within the administrative code or in administrative rules, the due date for that was changed from April 15 to June 15. I think we have been in contact with everyone who's expressed interest in that program at this point. That rule change as well was effective on April 6th of 20. We also recognized in our discussions and meetings with the library systems, with Carly, specifically about delivery, and then about reopening plans or curbside delivery services, that the typical nature of your operations as far as allowing reciprocal access, reciprocal borrowing, and interlibrary loan, and actually what is a requirement for library system membership, that was just not possible right now in all cases. Some libraries are able to do that for curbside delivery services and honor cards from other libraries. However, recognizing that, we suspended the requirement for reciprocal access, reciprocal borrowing, and interlibrary loan as part of library system membership, which will go through 45 days after the expiration of Executive Order 2020-32 or any subsequent order to that. So right now, that requirement is at least lifted through July 13, and we will readdress whether that needs to be extended as well, recognizing that it still may not be possible even by mid-July for that to occur. I think of note, in speaking of that executive order, we still await to see if there will be a change to that or a modification or a new executive order. The state does move to, or the governor has announced that the entire state moves to phase 3 of the Restore Illinois plan, but I simply don't know today if there will be any modification or a new executive order issued in place of the modified version, which was effective on May 1. We'll wait to see about that and take that direction from the governor's office. At the state library, we are reopening on Monday, June 1st. Our staff will return in force. We will be open to the public with certain parameters, certainly as far as social distancing. Our staff will be required to be masked when they are not in their own private workspace, when they're in shared workspaces or walking throughout the building. Our building's very, very different if you see the signage when you come to it today, but we will be open to the public as a government office. Certainly the issue of library material safety that will be discussed, I'm sure, today yet. We will be implementing practices regarding that here at the State Library as well. We have already been quarantining the talking book and braille service items that have come in, whether it's the machines or the talking books themselves, cartridges themselves, for a period of 7 days. We will continue to do that until we gain more knowledge, hopefully through the Beall study that has been commissioned with the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and we all await the timing of release of that information. That's going to be our practice. I should say that as of this week as well, in case you're getting any questions locally about the talking book and braille service, we have brought a core group of people in to get those items circulating back out to the state. And as of noon today, so it will be in 3 days, 14,000 items will have shipped back out from our office statewide, and we will focus tomorrow morning on what are 1,000 items of specific requests that patrons have placed during this time. So items are back in circulation for that program, and then we will address the machines themselves that have come in replacement of those items next week. I think that's it for reopening at the moment. Certainly there was other legislation regarding for the new Cards for Kids program, which there will be more information coming to the library systems, the Library Association regarding that, and some clarification of what that will mean. And it will require administrative rules being adopted by our office for administration of that program statewide as well.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions for Greg? Just put them in the chat. We'll give it a minute, Greg.
How am I coping? Well, we're doing well. The nature of our work here has been very different. So at one point for weeks, there were 2 of us in our entire building. So it's been quite different. Status of the public library per capita. Yes, I should have mentioned that. Those awards are forthcoming, I assure you. We had calculated that information and we're ready to release those on the day we were sent home. So we are awaiting our staff's return so that information can be processed.
And Greg, there's a question about the non-resident kids cards. From Jill, will input from actual libraries be sought, or will it only be office staff?
Actually, because that will not need to follow the emergency rulemaking process, that will go through the typical process where there will be a 45-day comment period.
And you also have any updates on IHLRs? Have the new directives been sent out?
I will verify that regarding the public library annual reports, but I thought any due date changes had been issued. I will need to follow up that with the library development group. There has been nothing issued regarding public library per capita grants for next year yet. Delays in funds released for public library per capita grants. I would expect that that will be the case. The state comptroller from the very beginning of this pandemic and the changes in receipts from income taxes coming into the state with the extension of the due date has been very forthcoming with information about possible delays in payments. For all payments issued by the state, whether it's a grant or a vendor payments. On how to answer questions such as attendance and hours open. I will have Pat Berg give some clarifications regarding attendance and hours open, but I thought that question was actually for the prior year, but let me share that information with her.
And Greg, we can certainly send a follow-up document out after this meeting.
Sure.
To tie up some loose ends. Any other questions? Greg, thank you so much. And we're delighted to see you. As happy as you might be to see the member libraries, we're very happy to see you. Our next speaker is Diane Foote, Director of the Illinois Library Association. And Diane and her colleagues at ILA have worked very, very hard to certainly share resources with Illinois libraries and also to help Illinois libraries reach out to their communities. So welcome, Diane.
Thank you so much, Ellen. It always takes me a minute to unmute. And thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's really good to see so many people all together. I was invited here today to speak primarily about ILA's Bigger Than a Building campaign, but that's related to some other activities that we've been undertaking over the past several weeks. I'd also like to echo Leslie's comments from the very beginning about how truly remarkable the library community has been throughout all of this. There's just no other way to say it. I've spoken about our Bigger Than a Building campaign in an event for trustees and a couple other events, but I think this is the first time where we've spoken about it in a group that is broader than any one particular audience. So I'm pleased to be able to do that today. I know that we have some members of the ILA Executive Board on the call with us today. Welcome to you guys as well. It's good to see you here. What I'd first like to do, and some of you may have seen this, many of you may have seen this already, and if that's the case, I apologize. I do want to make sure that everybody's working from a common base of knowledge. So, and I won't spend too much time on any one of these things, but I do want to make sure that everybody is aware of them. So some of you may remember that at the beginning of this whole thing, even before the first stay-at-home order was put in place by the governor, the ILA Executive Board came up with a statement acknowledging the reality of what was happening and recommending that libraries take some very specific measures in order to combat the community spread of COVID-19, including potentially closing. And actually that to physically close the building was a recommendation at that time. And we know that most libraries have done that, and it's fine if you didn't do that. ILA is not going to come after anyone, but that was the board's recommendation at that time. As the situation has developed and grown, and as Illinois looks toward opening, and as we look toward phase 3, opening the state, I mean, which means physically reopening some of our facilities as well. I don't know that a firm date has been set for phase 3 yet for the start of it, and it'll be interesting to see as the end of this month unwinds what the announcement might be for the next 30 days out of the governor's office, and certainly out of the legislature, who just wrapped up that very abbreviated session. The ILA Executive Board met for a regular scheduled meeting on May 8th and issued another statement, and I'm going to share my screen. That always takes me a second, so bear with me. Oh, the attendee screen sharing is disabled. Can someone
go ahead and try again,
fix
Diane.
that for me? I will try again. Thank you. There we go. Thank you so much. So here is the May 8th statement on Governor Pritzker's Restore Illinois plan. I'm not going to read it out word for word. You can see it there. You may have seen it already in email as well. I'd like to just point out some of the key features of it, which include an assertion about the key role that libraries play in our communities. We intentionally avoided the word essential because that seems to have been a word that the governor has used that has not necessarily served our community that well, because he didn't opt to define that very clearly in terms of our community. So we are using the wording that we are crucial to our communities, and that's not going to be news to anyone here. We hope to be able to use this kind of statement and the resources in the Bigger Than a Building campaign when we're making the case to people outside our communities. I should note that ILA over the past several weeks has been lobbied to ask the governor to declare that our libraries are essential and that we all must be open fully to the public during this time. We have been lobbied to ask the governor to declare that we should be shut down completely, including no curbside during this time, and for various levels of openness or closedness in terms of our physical facilities in between. And ILA has opted to not take those approaches because we don't believe that a one-size solution fits all. So ILA was very intentional in making a recommendation at the beginning that libraries physically close, just a recommendation, and very intentional with the May 8th statement that we fully affirm the right and the responsibility of individual communities to make these decisions in light of what the governor has said and has not said with regard to us. We have asked the governor's office through several different channels to not make edicts about the library community and what we should or shouldn't be doing without checking with us. That is the only thing that we have asked him to do. So far, he hasn't checked with us, but he hasn't made any edicts about our communities. So in a way, that's very difficult because it would be much easier if somebody from on high just said, do this and don't do that. But I don't think we would be very happy with that result either, because everybody wants the edict to say the way they want to do it, and that's just not possible because that differs across the state, as we all know. We've heard from library directors whose area hospitals are at maximum capacity, and not just here in Chicago. We've heard from library directors whose communities have barely any diagnoses, and hospitals have plenty of capacity. That's only one of the factors that should go into considering your pace of reopening. So another key point of this May 8th statement is that the ILA board had a very thoughtful and intentional discussion about whether we should make another recommendation about opening or not opening, or curbside or not curbside, or whatnot, and very intentionally decided not to do that with respect to everybody's community truly being different. So while we know that library boards and directors and staff and trustees are looking to us for leadership on these issues, our leadership is taking the form of identifying issues and working with the systems to identify issues and working with the systems to identify examples of the way different libraries are doing it and the key things that need to be considered as you make your plans. I don't think anybody believes necessarily that on June 1st, the doors are going to fly open and people are going to stream in. That's not happening, obviously. I guess I shouldn't say obviously, because there does seem to be concern out there that would happen. But certainly the bullet points here in terms of considerations as libraries make their plans are really what ILA feels we need to focus on now. And it's been one of the things that's been so vexing over the past several weeks and continues now is that there is a lack of information. Greg cited the IMLS OCLC Beall study about the viability of the virus on library materials, but they are doing it right versus doing it quickly. Which is great, but we're not going to have definitive results from that study until later in the summer. Meanwhile, we're starting our services now. So it's been, it is difficult. Nobody wants to make a decision in the absence of some scientific data, yet the scientific data isn't here yet. So here we are having to make these decisions. So I know that everyone's struggling with really difficult decisions at this time, and we are too. We hear you and we understand that. I will pause for a minute and just look to see if there's anything in the chat. Looks like not much at this point. Okay, not for me yet. That's great. So I'm going to share my screen again and introduce or reintroduce, if you've seen it already, our Bigger Than a Building campaign. which was pulled together very quickly and with great appreciation on my part by a contracted consultant, Marcia Marola, who was a former director of the Office for Library Advocacy at the American Library Association, Cindy Robinson and Tamara Jenkins on the ILA staff, Ellen Poppett and Shandy Grieve-Penride at IHLS, Monica Harris and Mary Witt from Rails, and Alex Todd and Jim Dieters, who are co-chairs of the ILA Advocacy Committee. So many thanks to that group for designing and pulling together these resources. These resources are not static. We do expect to be enhancing them. The next step for enhancing them is a group that we're working with, including Carly and the Illinois Association of College and Research Libraries, spearheaded by ILA President Molly Beestrom, who is herself an academic librarian, to adapt some of these resources for an academic setting. You'll see here that the theme of Bigger Than a Building is really to remind our audiences, and that includes our patrons, that includes our trustees, that includes our municipal partners, our town selectmen, our mayors, our alder people, anyone who has a stake in our future, about our value beyond what physically happens in the library. Obviously, this was most key during a time when the physical buildings were mostly closed, but this issue is not going to go away if the doors aren't going to burst open on June 1st with business as usual and everybody pouring in, which is likely not the case, right? So we hope that these resources will help you in your communities going forward, even after we enter phase 3 and beyond. You'll see here, sometimes when I scroll around, some of you who've been on various email meetings with me in the past know that I refer to making people seasick as I scroll around in the screen, and I'm actually waving my hands and making facial expressions, which you can't see because you're looking at my screen. But at any rate, I'll just take us through, and I'm not going to read through all the resources word by word. That's not important right now. You can look at the resources a little bit later, but we do have 5 ways to protect your library. So we know that pointed questions come to libraries when our doors are closed, right? From our communities. It's been really gratifying to see that communities really want us to be open. They want our services. And that's fantastic. That is, we've almost never seen a demonstration of our worth in libraries stronger than what we've seen over the past several weeks with people clamoring for our doors to be open. So that's the good side of that coin. The kind of the threat to that side of a coin is that there's a possibility that we will be perceived as not being open or not providing services if our building isn't open, and we know that that's not wholly the case. So, number one here, create a plan for opening your library. That's fairly, understood by now, I would imagine. And working with your team to spread the word. I imagine we have people at all levels of library workers and staff here today. So work with each other to come up with your plan, your communications plan, as well as the physical plan for reopening. Engaging your allies. And some of this might seem like common sense, but it's sometimes helpful to see a roadmap for how to do it, or kind of a roadmap really is the best word that's available statewide, that you're not going to be the only, you don't have to reinvent the wheel on this. You're not going to be the only library in the state, going through maybe these steps. So letting your decision makers know. So in some of your cases, if you're library districts, your decision makers are your library board. In cases where you are a municipal library, yes, your decision makers are your library board, but there's a little bit more of a dance there, right, with your mayor and your town leadership when you have a municipal board. So let your decision makers, no matter who they are, and think broadly about who they are, know what you've been doing during the crisis, and ensure that looking ahead, it's not only about paying staff during the time when your building is closed. It's about looking ahead. It's about positioning for the future. We're going to be some of the first places that people turn for help when we open up, when people come out of their houses, right? When they're able to go back to work, and maybe their job has been curtailed and they need to find a new one. Maybe they need to apply for some resources. We're going to be some of the first places that they look. They're already looking to us to do that. But in order for us to be positioned to be strong when everybody opens up and comes back, we need to be thinking about that now, and our decision makers need to be supporting us now. So with that, we can move on to libraries during the stay-at-home order talking points. This is part of our suite of materials. And, you know, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. Everyone in this room probably knows all of these things that are being done. These are meant to be useful to you, so that we've articulated it. We've put the wording together for you, to share with your stakeholders and with your decision makers or with your patrons. And so in the practical considerations area is where we talk about really being able to position the library strongly for when things start to open up. And we know that unemployment is high across the state, across the country, and well beyond the world of libraries. I think it would be very naive to think that the library world would be completely immune from that. And so we recognize that there will need to be, or there will inevitably be some unfortunate laying off and furloughing. And we understand, you know, from the directors and the trustees who need to do that. And we've not made a recommendation about doing that or not doing that. These are just considerations to take in place if we want our libraries to be as strong as they can when we reopen. Reopening library buildings, I think the systems have done a phenomenal job. You'll see that ILA's points here are fairly general, but the systems have done a phenomenal job about really articulating kind of the nuts and bolts and sharing examples among each other of all of you of how what that might actually look like. So I think in this sort of campaign that we've designed and the information that's coming from the systems and the information and guidance that comes from the state library about our legal obligations has really been a nice synchronicity of efforts among all of our statewide and regional groups. We're trying not to reinvent each other's wheels or duplicate work or let anything drop between the cracks. With regard to communications tools, we've put up sample press releases, sample letters to decision makers, sample op-eds, as well as some examples of memos that other primarily public libraries have used so far. So, you know, again, don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you are going to, if you're writing one of these or adapting them for your own use, you're going to have to customize them for your locality, for your community, because we know that ILA can advocate and does advocate on a state level all the time, but we know, you know, your local folks don't really want to hear from the lobbyists in Chicago. You know, they want to hear from you and they need to hear from you. Sorry, my screen just went blank. There we go. We've also created some downloadable logos for use on social media and your website. And I would like to give a shout out to at least one Heartland Library, which is the 6 Mile Regional Library District, who's already got this logo up on your website. So I hope glad that it has been helpful to you. Along those lines, we'd also invite you to share with us if you are using any of these logos or if you have found a press release template to be helpful for you, or if you have adapted any of your letters, we can put up the letters as samples. If you don't want them to be shared publicly, just let us know, because we want to be able to assess the value and the success of this campaign once it's over. You know, we're leaving it up. We think these messages are going to be helpful in perpetuity, but you know, several months from now, we are going to want to know if you know, the resources we put toward developing these tools were actually useful for you guys. So resources for reopening, we've already talked about that a little bit and shared some of the resources primarily from the systems as well as from some other public libraries. So I won't go through those necessarily here. And then articles to help make the case. We've sort of curated some selected articles that have appeared in national and local press. Many of these articles do come out in our daily COVID-19 updates that I hope many of you or most of you are seeing. If you're not seeing them, you can subscribe to them in the footer of the main ILA webpage at ila.org. So I will stop talking about that now and see if anyone has any questions or comments in the chat. And again, thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about this and to share these resources. I see a few comments in the chat, so let's see. Oh, thank you, Troy, for putting up some of the links. Thank you in the chat. I really appreciate that. Yeah, could this be posted? Yep, there we go. Got it. Sure. So yeah, speaking about quarantining, right? Quarantine articles, that's for a future panelist. And that is an open question. You know, the quarantining of materials is not, you know, that's one of these questions that we don't have a clear-cut answer to. Good. Consensus on quarantine. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Oh, sorry. My time's up. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Diane. And actually, that was a perfect segue. And I think your discussion of bigger than a building really opens up a lot of resources to so many of us that we're so grateful for. So that being
I
said,
hope so.
I'm going to turn it over now to Susan Palmer. Our next section will be an update from SHARE and an update from delivery. So Susan's going to start us first with delivery. And please be assured that whatever questions we can't handle today, we will follow up on and get back to all of you. So Susan, do you want to take it away?
Yes, hi, welcome. I'm so thrilled to be here, but I'm hearing myself echo. Anyway, we do have, I sometimes have problems with technology, and I have a wonderful administrative assistant, Sarah, who's going to pull up our, I did create 5 o'clock this morning, because sometimes you get the good ideas really like not in line with your work day, right? So we have a quick little PowerPoint. Here comes delivery. I want to preface this by saying all those documents that we have out there, you can't tell it, but it's fluid. It's super fluid. We have to start somewhere. And I'm open to input. We were fortunate that we had 9 libraries participate with the delivery staff to kind of help craft what they could envision delivery looking like and how it's coming back. Because ultimately it's you libraries who are driving us. What's interesting is this, you know, it says, well, I don't have to read it to you, but anyway, that was like the first thing. I checked Facebook, yeah, I'm one of those. And that was what greeted me this morning. And I thought, wow, that is spot on. You know, these things have taken us by surprise. I feel as though there's no way we could have predicted we would be where we are as a country, where we are as a nation, where we are as Illinois, where we are as libraries and library systems. But this brings to us the opportunity to imagine. Imagine now we've had a mandatory pause, and imagine what can we do in the future. And it's going to have to be a balance between imagining, which I love, and also between the next slide, please. It's going to be a balance between accurate information. And that seems to be the thing that I'm like chasing constantly. We've mentioned the Beall study, and Diane is spot on that they're doing it right. So it's going to be maybe August. I'm sure there's pressure on them as well to try to move that timeline up, but we have to be able to move ahead and with the best information that we can get. Some of the places that we've been looking at are the CDC, the Center for Disease Control.gov. The EPA has a wonderful website with specifics on what you would use for disinfecting. And trying to get that accurate information so that we can have a really good plan is, it changes, right? Then the next slide. I don't know if you watch The Office or not, but I feel like I do this almost daily anymore because things are changing and we do want to have the best response that we can, but we're kind of winging it at some level. Only through the collective group of all of us can we get to the best place that we can be. Do I have all the answers? Oh, heck no. Does anyone have all the answers? Heck no. But we're going to do it. So then I also want to remind everybody, I mean, we've got support as a library community. You know, we are very, very, very fortunate. We have the Secretary of State, Jesse White, and we have the Illinois State Library. Both of them are not just funding partners. They're also helping us to guide and helping, like, you know, when Greg was talking about making sure that the administrative rules reflect the situation. They did those emergency orders, making sure that we are substantial and within the rights of the law. Fabulous. We have that support. We also have the support of ILA. Diane, there has just been, I'm speaking kind of a little bit personally, but such a change in, I think there's just a really good partnership that's happening, and we appreciate all that you have done and all that your organization has done and shared. So That being said, we've now got loads and loads and loads and loads. We've got loads of items. Kind of our goal as we're looking at this is that we have currently over 14,000 items. I know Talking Books did over 14,000 items and got those out. That is like competition. So what our main goal is to get the items that we have in our hubs, because when we stopped delivery, it was like, bam, we stopped. So we have things in our hubs that need to still be sorted out because we've been following Governor Pritzker's orders. And we have not had the staff in until June 1st. So we're going to have to get as many items, no, we're going to get all those items, separated out and ready to deliver to the libraries. As far as how we handled schools the same way as we do every year when about the middle of May, schools, they go off for the summer. So we've gone through the school items and we have put the returning library items back to the returning libraries in those tubs, and the schools on their shelves will just have only their items. And in doing that, we are not able to go through all the tubs and do that for everybody. So you're going to receive tubs that have in there probably holds from February, March maybe. You're also going to have some items interspersed, with your returns. So that piece is the libraries. That's for you folks to decide what to do with those items. If you have it ready for me, I'm going to be the one who comes, picks it up, and we deliver. So kind of the delivery process is going to look like this. I know, pickup frenzy. I know, but it is, and that's an actual van with items in it. So when you look at the calendar, I did I'm a very visual person, and I had to see if what I'm saying really was gelling. The first 2 weeks we're going to spend trying to get the buildings ready. We have staff. We got to have our buildings ready for the staff to come back, trying to get those items sorted out, trying to, the reality is, I know recently I said in a meeting that our items have been quarantined 6 weeks, and somebody corrected me that it's actually been 10 weeks. So I don't know why I didn't think it as long as what it is, but those items have not been touched by human hands for 10 weeks. There will be items that we will start sorting that are going to be touched, but again, we're going to have in process. We had a task force of delivery staff that have created procedures for us to make sure that we're taking care and doing the best that we can with the best information that we have. We will not be wiping down individual items. That will be for the libraries for their processes. We will be doing the tubs. The tubs are touched, and we're going to wipe those down and spray them so that the virus is no longer viable. So a typical day in that calendar, June 15th, we will be going out. Hopefully also in that 2-week period, we're going to try to get as many libraries as we can contact. You folks, if you could use that help desk ticketing system and let us know when you would like items. Not everybody's going to want their stuff. Everybody's coming in different, and that's fine because you're responding to your communities. So if you're a library who's like, whoa, I am not ready for my tubs of stuff, let us know and we will not deliver it. I do not have the space to quarantine items as they come in. So what I'm asking is that the libraries, as you have items that you will be sending back, because eventually we're going back into this, right? Quarantine them for 72 hours and then put them out for our drivers to grab. Because 72 hours, there's not a right and wrong answer, is there? But that was what the CDC had said for the viability of the virus at one point on plastic, So that we're going to go with that for right now. And if we bring it in and we maybe quarantine another 24 hours, I don't know, because I don't know the volume. I was not here when SHARE first came together, then the turning on of the patron holds, but I have heard I have heard tales of that time. I don't want that again. I have never had it, but I don't want it. We are asking that you would put in that, as you see where those orange or yellow tags are, if you could put the date that it was last touched, the items inside were last touched, that would be appreciated. So we have some kind of idea the amount of quarantine time. So, typical day. Well, we're almost ready for this. Super quick. Typical day. Those first 2 days, the 15th and 16th, our guys are going to go out. We're going to go and we're going to do as many libraries as we can. So say route 1, these 30 libraries. Say we get to library 6 and it looks like that van, and we can't get any more in and we can't get any out because everything's so packed. We're going to go back to the hub. We're going to empty. That next day, we start with library 7 in that route. Unfortunately, I can't give you times. Times are kind of up a creek right now. They're just kind of during this day. I feel like the cable company, you know? I'm feeling it'll be in the morning, maybe the afternoon, maybe evening. Well, we're not going to do evening. We're going to try to keep it in a, 8 to 5 or whatever we can do. So we are also going to have some extra tubs. We've tried to prepare and get some extra tubs. Reality is we may not have room to put the extra tubs in to give you guys the extra tubs. So that being said, because I know libraries, some of you guys have had those book drops open and doing stuff, so you have items. If you could put them in a sturdy container, sturdy box, fabulous. If you want your sturdy container back, put your library's name on it. We will bring it back to you, okay? And we will have some available. It's going to be just kind of we don't really know. So that's our practice for right now, how we feel that it's going to happen. Totally open to switching gears here. We are really good with plan B, C, D, F, Z, so we will have to try to collectively address issues as they come up. And I would like to have your input because I can't fix a problem if I don't know there's a problem. And I like to assume everything is just great. I tend to do that throughout life. So after those 2 weeks of, so you got the 2 days where we're delivering. We got Wednesday. Wednesdays, I've coordinated with Rails, Reaching Across Illinois Library System, and Mark Hatch, who's my counterpart. We get along, and we were trying to figure out when to do that exchange of items between North and South. Because we've got loads of items to switch that go back up north, some come back down south. And the main goal is to get as many library-owned items back to your owning library, right? So that you have the inventory. Because if you're just doing curbside, you want to have as many items as you can in your library for your patrons who are driving through. So that being said, we chose Wednesday. Initially, I don't have routes on that day, but then I was really holding that day as a placeholder because I'm not sure what that Monday, Tuesday look like. I may have a ton of libraries, I may not. So it's kind of a pause day, it's open, and if we see we need it, we'll be out. The exchange normally happens at night between North and South. So all those night walkers, they call themselves the night walkers, are going to have to become day walkers. We're going to exchange during the day to get those items then back sorted and back out. It's a great group. It is amazing the way that they work as a team between the systems. Very, very appreciative of them. They've got it down to a science. I try to help every once in a while because I love to watch the process, and I want to stay in touch so I know what's actually happening. And they're basically saying, Susan, go over there, anyway, they've got it down pat. So that next week, 4th of July is happening. It's happening on a Saturday. We're going to observe it on a Friday. So we'll have 4 days in that week. That's when we're going to regroup, rethink, reevaluate, and return. We're going to develop another plan because I have while I feel we have a very solid, good plan, who knows? who knows, it could all crumble, right? But I don't want it to fail. I really hate failures. I see them more as learning experiences. I just phrase it different. So then on the next slide, we're going to try to avoid this guy, right? I don't want this guy around. I've had moments, you know, I'm trying to keep what an adorable fellow at bay. So that's why also that little 4-day pause is going to help us avoid him. And then we're going to embrace this gal. Look at this gal and her face. It actually says, get your happy on. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get our happy on, and then we're going to get ready to go again. One of the great things is that because we did have that access to 5 days a week delivery, who would have known that it prompted us? It got us ready for this COVID thing. Our drivers, our sorters are used to not having only these set libraries on Mondays and Wednesdays. You know, it's also helped because you libraries have had like little variations. They normally come at 10, but they probably had to drop off at these 3 libraries. So it's going to be a little bit later. That's all prepared us for this very moment because we don't know and don't have a lot of stone here. So I just wanted to, that's where we're getting ready to go again. Is that not a fun picture? We're going to be ready to go after that pause. And so I just really wanted to go ahead and thank you guys. And thank you for understanding. It really is, it's just a guess, you know, a good guess, as much as I can make it good. But, and we're open to the input. Sorry, Scott, I know I shouldn't have put it out there. So then our last slide is questions, comments, suggestions. And I probably went way over my time because I have an audience. It was just Sarah and me before, and I had it down to 5 minutes.
Susan, we do need to move ahead. Tina has asked about collecting and publicizing what individual libraries are doing. And Tina, I can tell you that's an effort that Monica Cameron has started, and we're partner with her on trying to make that happen. Susan, there are a lot of questions in here about quarantining and labeling. So Linda Petty's answered a couple of them, and maybe what we can do is do some follow-ups after that where we can clarify some of these questions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So I promise you, we will get back to all of you on these.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And the slides were great. I really enjoyed them. The next part of making things come back to normal again is the discussion of SHARE services. So Cassandra Thompson, our SHARE director, if you'd like to take over, we'll let you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Helen, and thank you all for joining us today to learn more about what this is going to look like. And I think that we all agree we don't want to be the sad little guy on there. So as SHARE is anticipating the executive order ending or phase, being in phase 2 and then moving over to phase 3, we are, SHARE staff is here and available to help you. So for school libraries, with the governor ending schools through the end of the 1920 school year, we have extended all of the due dates for all students to August 31st. And so there may be items for schools that remain closed through the summer that are frankly just stuck in those schools. And so we have extended those to try to prevent chaos from happening when students panic because they haven't got their book back yet. For due dates for everyone else, the due dates are set to June 8th right now. And so unless we receive another statewide executive order that's in that phase 2 where things are being recommended to be closed, we will not extend that. And so if you are planning to remain closed past that June 8th date, please let us know. If you could fill out a closing dates form on the SHARE website, what we will do is enter those closing dates for you. And so when your items come back, you will not have any type of late fees And so that will be very helpful. If you also want to extend your due dates for your patrons, we can do that for you as well. We can do that just on an individual basis. We've had a few libraries that said, hey, please just extend all of our due dates till the end of June. We can certainly do that just based on the date that you give us. We also have some additional changes that we've been seeing from libraries, that you're not going to be open the same days. If you need us to change that in the pack, please let us know. If you're quarantining items, we can set a customized shelving status, and so you can put it in shelving 72-hour quarantine on that status. If you need any additional settings changes or support for opening, again, just please let us know. You can kind of share your plans with us, and we can help you develop what settings would be most appropriate. And so I'm going to go ahead and share the email address that you can use to contact us. And so it's share@illinoisheartland.org. So notifications is another big topic. While we are not extending the due date system-wide, we are not going to go ahead and turn on notifications system-wide, because we don't want to cause patrons to have anxiety till you get a flood of calls. So we are not going to resume those until we talk to you. So that includes both overdues and holds. And so as soon as you notify us that you'd like us to resume, we will be happy to do that. If you're wanting to do curbside service and you'd like to leave those off, that's also perfectly fine. Some libraries prefer to leave those off so they can make personal phone calls to give instructions. We can also make changes to your hold notifications if that is more helpful for you. So again, we are here to assist you in any way that we can as you plan for those reopenings. One of the questions that I saw as we were getting started is about interlibrary loan. That will not resume until delivery is ready to start again with full service. If you know that you're ready to start again with interlibrary loan as soon as delivery is ready to start, let us know. It will take us a few days to get you set back up, but what will happen is that we will get you added back into what we call them the routing tables, so that that other libraries know that you're ready to borrow, and the system will recognize that. So your patrons can still place holds at their home library. So for instance, I'll use Fairview Heights as an example. If you have a patron that has a book at that library and they're a patron of that library, they can still go ahead and place a hold. Even if it's not on the shelf, it'll still come through. Now, if it's at O'Fallon, until they are both back in that queue, that hold will not be placed, and so the patrons will see an error message. And so we've changed the language just a little bit to be a bit more precise, that they may get an error message. So it says, due to widespread library closures, you may not be able to place holds on items from other libraries at this time. So that is going to be the banner that's on the pack. And so when the patron places the hold, it actually gives them an error that this item cannot be placed on hold. Please contact your library. And so unfortunately, the error message itself we can't change, but we do have an alert on the pack so patrons are aware. And when delivery resumes, patrons can still only place holds at the libraries that have notified us to resume service. So let's say that Mascuda has said that they'd like to remain not accepting or sending interlibrary loans. And so at that time, they will still remain out of that queue, and that's fine with us. And so those patrons will get those error message if they're trying to place loans on items outside of their home library. But the ones that have started again, that's perfectly fine. They will start sending and receiving. So that is what we expect for the next few weeks and few months. And of course, as Susan said, it's a plan, but it's certainly subject to change depending on what happens just in the world. And so I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everyone for being so gracious, for working so hard to figure out the best plan for each of your communities, but doing it and sharing it and being so willing to work together and working as part of our system for SHARE. I know that we are so happy to see all of that cooperation, and of course know that we are also able to assist you, and we're going to try to be really nimble if circumstances do change. So again, contact us at share@illinois.org if you need any assistance, because we are all just happy to help.
Any additional questions for Cassandra? Dina has posted the form to use for closing notifications. Anything else?
So
Go ahead, Kathy.
I do see a question about training and book returns work with the new librarian. The training part is we're still determining how that will work. We're thinking about doing some workshops. The best thing right now is the SHARE training portal, which that's on the SHARE website just under training. They can log in with their SHARE username and password to access that. The 10 Commandments of SHARE is a good place to start, but we've also got LEAP training up and available. So that would be a good place to get them started. If you have any, Doreen, if you have any information about that new person, if you need to get her set up with a username and password, just send us the information. We'll be happy to do that. And so for training, again, we have stopped all in-person training as of right now. We are still talking about what that's going to look like in the future and potentially moving to more virtual options as well.
Susan and Cassandra, if you would look with me, there are 2 questions here that probably we should follow up on a little bit, and it's both of you. From Gary, when are you planning to have delivery ready for interlibrary loan? Susan, I believe if we look at your calendar, which is flexible and fluid and always subject to change, that is anticipated and hopefully after the 4th of July, correct?
Right. You know, off camera, I popped a stick in my mouth. So really quick, I feel that it's July 6th.
Okay. And then, because Susan, there was also, I hate to put you on the spot,
No worries.
that probably it's better addressed in a big group. Somebody asked about what to do with the bags they have. Can they send materials back in the canvas bags?
Yes, you can send the materials back in the canvas bags. The reason that we are going to, and we haven't found the right size Rubbermaid tub yet, so it may just be our regular Rubbermaid tubs with less items in it, cleaning. The canvas bags are an issue. It's kind of like a stuffed animal. Well, not quite. I guess it's a little bit harder, but to get those clean, we don't have the skills, the facilities, or the ability. So that's why we're switching everybody over to the tubs. And I realize, you know, it's a change, and our drivers, you know, voice some concerns, but we are going to go ahead with this. Sometimes you just got to make the hard decisions. Cleanliness.
Thanks, Susan. And the quarantine you referenced had to do with 72 hours from staff touching it, right?
Right. Right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Cassandra related to SHARE? Great. And please, one thing I want to say to all of you while we're here, never, and it sort of echoes how Cassandra closed, never hesitate to reach out to any of us. Whether it's SHARE staff, delivery staff, Anna and I on the membership level, we're checking our email, we're checking our voicemails. So please, we feel really passionately about being here to provide support and service to all of you. So never hesitate to reach out. That being said, I'm going to pass the baton to my colleagues, Anna Yackel, Amy Byers, Bobby Perryman, and Diana Sussman. It's been really interesting to think about the phases we've been through. You know, initially we had to struggle with closures, with all the legal requirements about holding board meetings, all those kinds of things. We've had sad things to discuss like furloughs. And for the last couple of weeks, the discussion has all been much more positive because it's all focused on reopening efforts. So these 4 skilled women are going to discuss how they're planning to reopen their libraries. So I will turn it over to you, and their documentation is all on the L2 site too.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. And I would like to say thank you to Amy and Diana and Bobby. You have all been wonderful leaders, mentors, and sharers of information and knowledge. I really appreciate that, and I know you've been an inspiration to several other directors. And I also want to reach out to all of those other directors and thank you for also being great leaders in this time of crisis for your communities and for your staff. It's been hard. You've done a great job. I'm proud of all of you. Now, that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Amy and let her talk about how she came up with her plan, what her plan is, how she sees implementing it. You know, just those minor questions I'm sure she can handle in 5 minutes or less. Okay, Amy, take it away.
Okay, get the timer ready. I first want to thank Becky and Samantha over at Clinton. So I feel a little weird going first because if you look at my plan, it mimics a lot of what they've done. And I know a lot of other directors are also really appreciative of what they've done. They've also started a lot earlier than us. So we have literally stolen so much from them. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But for us, I guess I first want to answer that question that Michelle posted on that chat about our quarantining time, because we're doing a 7-day quarantine. I know a lot of people are doing the 72 hours, which it might be good too. I don't know. The one thing that I saw that said 3 to 7 days, and so I'm just erring on the side of extreme caution. And until I know something else, that's why we're going to the more drastic side of things. So that's honestly the reasoning we have, and hopefully I can limit that later, but haven't yet. But essentially, back a couple of months ago now, gosh, Bobby had put out that plan, and I modified that tiered approach of how to open up again. And that was really, really helpful because all of those ideas, I know we all know, were swimming in our heads, and having something put down on paper was just really helpful, right, to figure out. So while that plan that I put out has been modified quite a bit, it's still a good guidepost of how we're going to move forward. So yesterday we started curbside, and we started that at 10 o'clock in the morning, and at 10:12 we changed it. And we've changed it again. Not all of it, but there's pieces of it, that have already been modified, and we were already talking this morning about how to modify that again. So while we're doing it, we also realize that that's not necessarily, plans can only be so good until they're not, right? But our big push this week with curbside was to just focus on those hold shelf items, just to kind of guide the staff into working out all these kinks that we have. And so next week we can really start full on with curbside for everybody. So that's our goal for next week as we move forward. Based on my tiered approach, the next step for us is moving into a foyer entry option. And it's weird to say, but our building is built for a pandemic. So we have a really nice way of blocking off the stacks. So the foyer option is really good for us, that we have access to the front desk and also into our conference room, which we will turn into a makeshift computer lab, just for a couple of computers in there to have access for people. So that's our next stage, and I feel that will happen before the end of the month. I'm hoping by mid-month we'll be into that phase. But what's been really good for us is I've been working with our Sangamon County librarians. We've got some really great people over here that are working and communicating really well with what their plans are doing. So what was nice last Friday when we announced our curbside, Auburn announced, and so did Lincoln Library announced all on the same day. And I know that Rochester announced a little earlier, and then Sherman announced just recently. So we're all kind of in the same boat, but we're all communicating really well with each other, which I thought was really important. I've been fortunate to talk to the Department of Health here in Sangamon County, and they've been very gracious to look at our plan and go over everything and make sure that we're doing everything possible to provide as safe as procedure as we can. And I think the biggest thing that I want to say that we've done that I feel really good about is we've really provided a lot of training and comfort, hopefully, with procedures for staff. So they've had training on the PPE use. I have procedures of how they enter the building, how they exit the building, what they do in the building, where they go, what bathrooms, everything is kind of really spread out. So we're able to be in this building without really seeing each other. But everyone hopefully is very confident and comfortable with what our procedures are moving forward, and involving them in the process as we go has been really good. So it's been great. I don't know, day 2 of curbside, we'll see. But it's been a good process, and I really appreciate everyone sharing all of the materials out there that make it easy to, easier to modify what it is. But knowing our buildings and being creative and how we utilize the building and all the stuff inside of it has been a little more singular, in our concerns, but it's still nice to be able to work with each other. So that's it in a nutshell. We're excited for day 2.
Okay, great. That was great, Amy. I'm sure we'll have questions and we'll come back to you. Now I'm going to go to Bobby. And Bobby, I want to thank you for your broader leadership as well. I know you've been very active in ARSL, and also I know you've been active in DU and so many other things. I mean, every time I turn around, I see Bobby Perryman's name on things. I think that's fantastic. You're a good voice for all of us down here, and thank you so much for your contributions. I really appreciate it. And you have come up with some great ideas through all of this. You've really been a guiding star. Thank you, Bobby. And now I'm going to turn it over to you so you can talk about those things.
Well, thank you for your very kind words, Anna. And I apologize, we're in curbside right now, so you're going to hear the phone going off a lot with pages for people to pick up their stuff. I do want to say, and I have a smaller staff, so this works, I couldn't do what I do without my staff. So while we were closed, we had weekly Zoom staff meetings where we talked about what's going on and came up with ideas. So all of the plans that we have developed together as a staff. I and my business manager have spearheaded it, but we've all developed it together because my staff, they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones at the Circ desk. I will try to turn that down. So I think it's very important that you have that staff buy-in, especially in a situation like this where people are afraid. People have concerns about their health. You have to have your whole staff in on your planning. So anyway, shout out to my staff. Our plans are out there. We did start at curbside May 4th. We did start with our hold shelf, but also we put a form on our website for patrons to put in orders. We did not turn on our notifications because we have a lot of text and email notifications. We chose not to because we only had certain pickup hours and we are scheduling pickups. I'm going to just try to take off the hook. We're scheduling pickups. So we didn't want someone to get a text and think, oh, I can just go to the library and pick up my item, because no, you have to come during a scheduled pickup time. And that's worked out very well. We're a smaller library, but in the 3 weeks we've been doing this, we've had more than 1,000 items checked out. So we were pretty excited about that. We are actually moving on now to our lobby access, which will be starting June 1st. We just got approval this morning from the DWIP at Bi-County Health Department to start that. And I also want to say we're moving a bit faster than everybody else because in DWIP County, we've had a total of 4 cases of COVID. So we can move faster than everyone else, but if I were in Champaign County or Macon County or Sangamon, I would be doing a different plan. I think it's important that you look at your community, you talk to your local health authorities to decide what's best for your library. And like Amy, our building is kind of built for a pandemic, so we are able to block off so people can just come through our lobby and up to our circulation desk. We have 2 computers set up for public use because we have a lot of people in our community that do not have internet access or computer access at home that need us for that. It was actually kind of heartbreaking back in March and April when I had people calling, can I come in to file for unemployment? And me having to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't. So that's very important for us. We are limiting computer usage to 1 hour per patron per day, just to make sure there's enough time to go around. And our 2 computers are more than 6 feet apart. We've completely reconfigured our circulation desk to move our 2 staff workstations to opposite ends. I've always joked that we have fort circulation, and I hate it because it's ginormous. I'm very grateful for it now, that it is enormous. So we can keep our staff at least 7-8 feet apart from each other at that desk. And we are going to let staff use some of our public access workstations as computer stations when they come back next week, just so we have staff separation. There was a message, someone asked if we had approval from our county health department to do curbside. The answer is yes. We have not moved forward with any of our plans without approval from the health department, just because I wanted to be able to tell patrons and staff, these are the guidelines the health department has laid out, and it's important that we follow them. And if the health department comes in next week and says, you gotta shut this down, we will shut it down. We are just completely going with them. Kind of lost my train of thought going back. So we're going to see how the lobby access works. This will give patrons access to printing and copying, which they haven't really had access to. We've been doing curbside notary, but now we can do notary inside. We're still going to encourage our patrons to do curbside pickup of items, so calling ahead or doing an order ahead to come and pick up. But if they walk in, we will grab items for them. We have tables set up around our Circ desk that will be like quick picks. So new items, popular items, children's book bundles on different subjects that patrons can just grab and take up to the Circ desk to check out. And we have carts set up behind those tables where we can replenish. Because I know for my patrons, on a typical month, only 10% of the items that we check out are holds, the rest are browsers. So I want to be able to serve those browsers as best we can. So that's our plan right now. Thursdays are the most popular day for curbside pickup, as you can hear from my phone going off. So it's going well so far. One more thing I wanted to mention. This is a very stressful time, obviously, for all of us. It has been a stressful time. And for the first probably month and a half that this was all going on, I was on 24/7. And that was a bad choice on my part. And ended up with me having a breakdown in my bathroom where I cried for about an hour. And I want to let people know that's okay to have a breakdown. And please give yourself time. I no longer check my email and things on weekends. Give yourself time. Take a break. You got to step back. You can't be at 100% if you don't step back. So please be easy on yourself. I know it's hard, but please try. And that's what I've got.
Well, okay, thank you. That kind of makes me very sad to hear you say that you had an emotional.
I'm good now. I felt a lot better afterwards.
Well, sometimes you need to do that.
Yes.
And God knows there's been a lot of stress. So that's probably the healthiest way to handle it, I think, sometimes. But anyway, thank you very much. And I hope everyone has as busy a time with curbside as you have. And it's like hearing all those buzzing, it just made me realize, people really want their books from you. So that's exciting. I'd say that's like, what a testament to your value to that community. That's great. Okay, now I'm going to call on Diana. And, I'm excited to hear what Diana has to say because I'm hoping to go and visit the Carbondale Library very soon. So, okay, Diana, thank you too for all of your help and leadership, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. Well, right now we won't let you in the door, but you are welcome to come and do curbside pickup. We started curbside on Tuesday. We had our book drop closed until a week prior to starting curbside. So we brought in the books for a week before we started that. And we have not laid off any of our staff. We've kept our staff on and found things for them to do at home. and been very lenient about that, at least until June 1st, when things start to change a little bit. And then I'm trying to bring in all the staff who can be in the building. However, we have about 18 staff, 17 staff, which is unusual compared to some of our neighboring libraries. I had to create a schedule that kept them off of each other so that we never have more than 8 to 10 staff in the building at any time. On the evenings and weekends, we have more like 4 or 5. And right now we are just open for curbside. I have between a day shift and a night shift, I have a 20-minute schedule where the day shift leaves and the night shift comes in, so that hopefully they're not interacting with each other too much. I have some photos to share with you. Hold on one second. Oh, not coming out.
Hmm.
Oh well.
Okay, maybe Troy can.
No, I don't think so. I think it's not you guys. I'm just not seeing my PowerPoint. It's open, but it's not showing up as an option. That's okay. I don't need to show you. I can send it out for you guys to include the materials for people to see. But we did build. We bought some paper bags that have 10 inches wide on the bottom, so they fit materials for curbside really well. They're about 37 cents a piece, which was a good price, and that keeps it kind of uniform and easier to keep track of. And we did have our maintenance manager, who's very crafty, build a plexiglass barrier around our entire circulation desk. And it is removable. Don't have to keep it, but I think we might end up liking it. It's very pretty. So, and then we have been doing a lot in terms of online programming, and have had a lot of success with that. Last week I did a conference. I used webinar mode and Zoom and did a youth conference with 50 participants. And so we're doing everything that we can. And I wrote our opening plan basically by looking at Bobby's and everybody else's. Same thing with all of our curbside pickup plans. I looked at everybody else's forms, everybody else's procedures. We're bringing materials to the cars. We have a schedule that's laminated that we're using erasable marker on, where we will schedule 4 people every 15 minutes. So once an order is placed, either by phone or by email, we collect the materials and then we call the person back to schedule their time, so that it's not like fast food service where they ask for their materials and they expect those materials to be out within 15 minutes. So we only have 4 people at a time, four cars at a time coming up about every 15 minutes. And that so far so good. We got our book drop is now keeps getting overflowed in the middle of the day, so we're having to empty it more frequently now that we've put some press out there. Our plan, I've tried to use very, very fluid language to give me a lot of leeway to pull back or move forward depending on what's happening locally and statewide. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, it seems like one of the things that people keep coming back to is, quarantining material. And if each of you could kind of speak to how you came to your decision about making the time limits that you've chosen. Someone mentioned earlier that, Amy, you have decided 6 days. I know some people are doing 7 days. It just kind of like, what's your thought processes around that issue? So if you want to go first, Diana, that would be great. And then Bobby and Amy can take it in turn.
Sure. So when I first wrote our plan, I had put 3 to 5 days, and the board said, let's go with 5. And then the health department was fine with 5, but for practical reasons, what I did was set up 7 tables in our meeting room, since it's not in use for anything else. And I put a day of the week on each of those tables. So when you empty the book deposit box on Monday, you put all of those materials on Monday's table. You don't touch them, you don't process them, you just put them on and throw your gloves away. And you don't touch those books again until the following Monday. And then you pull those off of the table and you process them. We're not doing any additional spraying after that. 7 days is, as Amy said, kind of probably extra safe, but I'm still waiting for the science on that. So everything in our plan says like until and unless there's further information. So that's what we're doing, is that 7 days, partly just because it works out really well. It's not confusing. We're not going to accidentally pull something too early. And we believe, as far as we know, that just sitting there for 7 days should be enough.
Okay. Amy, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I think Diana summarized my plan pretty well. Thank you. Yeah, we're essentially doing the same thing where we have it all in the meeting room in the back. And that was one of the things that our health department asked me about, was how long are you quarantining the items for? How are you doing it? Making sure that those items are not around other library items, right? So having a meeting room or having a space like that really makes the most sense for us. Our plan, once they are done with the quarantine, is we have set up another computer station where we're going to be checking them all in. So to answer that question, did you check them in before you're quarantining? No. We're waiting. We're saying that, again, there's no fines. They're not getting any notifications right now. So we're just saying, it's okay. Just don't worry about it to our patrons. But until that 7-day time period has gone through, then we go and use a different station, because my goal is to have all of the check-outs happening at one side of the building and then all check-ins happening at the other, just to help with that separation, helping that staff workflow happen. So I think that was the other part that I don't think I've mentioned. But yeah, a lot of that was just taking extreme measures, and I didn't want to have to use our resources to clean all the items. So that was the other reason to have that lengthier time, just so we didn't have to use all of our resources very quickly, because I didn't know how long we were going to have them for. So that's about it.
Okay, Bobby, do you want to take that one? And also, I see you address the question about when you're putting the books in quarantine, do you lay them flat? Do you stand them up? How do you arrange?
Right. It depends on how many, because like Diane, we have tables set up in our basement for each day that we check our book drop. And right now we're just kind of laying them in stacks depending on how many there are. We try to lay out as many as we can, but we are following our specific health department's guidelines of, we do 3 days and then we wipe everything down with hot soapy water. We have low enough volume typically that we can do that. For a normal book drop, it takes my staff about an hour to wipe them all down. And then we check in. So we don't check in anything. We just, like Diane, we just put them on the table, take off the gloves and call it good. And that's working right now. Now, when we go back to normal hours, whenever that will be, we might have to rethink our flow, and maybe we'll just leave them down there longer and not do the wipe down. We'll have to talk to our health department about that.
Okay. Now, what do you see as your next step? I mean, say everything goes along as planned, how are you going to, I know you have it in your plan, but can you kind of cover what comes after curbside? And, the small openings, like Amy said, her library, which is a very nice, you all have wonderful libraries, and I've enjoyed visiting all of them. Amy said that her library is kind of designed for an epidemic, which is great. Nice to know. And then I know you have you have a kind of a multi-level entryway with stairs going, and then you have the big lobby area where your Circ is. Mm-hmm. And I know you don't have as much space in your library. So it's kind of like, how are you going to handle it when you actually open your doors? Okay, you want to go first, Bobby?
Okay, sure. So right now our plan when we just open our doors to normal hours is to go back to kind of where we were on March 16th, which was the day before we closed. We eliminated all seating areas. We eliminated all meeting room use. So basically patrons can come in, they can browse the stacks, but it's basically get your stuff and get out. It's phrased more politely than that for when we're actually opened. And I think that that is the next step in our plan after lobby access ends, and it might be mid-June when we go to full building open. I don't know yet. But also all of it, we have a huge toy collection upstairs. We put all of that away. Basically, we want patrons to be able to come in, get items, use a computer, access, you know, Circ desk services, and then leave. We do not want them to linger. And we missed one bench when we were eliminating all of our seating areas back in March. And sure enough, 2 patrons planted themselves down there really close and tried to talk for like an hour. And we had to make them move that bench because they'll do it if they have a seating area. So that's really our basic plan. Now we have our basic plans for each thing, but then we fine tune. So we had our basic lobby access plan. We spent the last week fine tuning it. So when we have our next step will be fine tuning our stacks are open, but no seating areas plan.
Okay. Diana, do you want to take a crack at how you're handling it?
We've separated all of our computers so that they are farther apart. We've taken out chairs at most tables. So in most cases, there's just one chair, but we are not opening to the public at the moment. So we have time to continue to reconsider that design. During the day, if a gathering is 10 people in a building, which is not defined, then we are at maximum capacity with staff. So we're not letting people in. I could potentially, when we begin to let people in, it would probably be by appointment only, like in the evenings and the weekends when we have fewer staff on. And then, of course, if things eventually go to stage 4 where we can have 50, even at 50 for our library, we're going to have to set some sort of limits and do something to discourage people from coming in, because on a normal day, we could easily have 50 to 75 people in our library. So we're going to have to kind of play it by ear. I'll have to see what other libraries are doing as far as letting people in. My concern in Carbondale is that other than potentially going to appointment only, if we try to do something like just say, well, the doors are open and we're going to say no more people than this can come in, we're going to end up in verbal and physical altercations with volatile people. So I'm still working out ways to deal with that. Even making an appointment and then coming over and opening the door and letting one person in. It's always difficult when I've had, programs, for example, that are on off hours. Like we'll open up the building just for a program on a Sunday morning, and you have to only come if you're there for that program. And when I open the doors, I have to have arguments with people who are just sitting there, who want to come in, who are not going to, they want to use a computer, they're not there for the program, it's not open to them for that use. So I'm still trying to sort that out.
Now, would you consider, like, if somebody had the capability of sending a print job to your printers, would you do that and handle it through curbside, or
we are
is that
going
a possibility? Okay. All right, Amy, you want to take your turn? Amy? Yeah, you.
Yeah, I can talk. Diana, were you going to say that you were doing printing with curbside? I didn't want to cut you off. You were saying something.
We are going to do faxing and printing, and we'll set it up like curbside. How I'm envisioning that is a table outside, and we give them an envelope with instructions. They put their materials, they write how many things they need or what it is that they need. They put their money in. We then go out when they've moved away, make their copies and so forth, and then put their change in there and set it back out on the table, and they walk back up and get it. So that's how we're envisioning doing that. I'm still working out those procedures, but we'll probably be able to start that later this week or next week.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay, Amy, take it away.
Okay, well, like I said, our next stage is our 4-year stage, and I'm hoping that we have a board meeting on June 15th, so my goal is to have that prepared for the June 15th meeting, and be able to work towards that. After that, I don't anticipate anything in June, but I'm hoping that in the next phase we can look at opening up our building. Additionally, I did have a question. Diana, you said that you were talking about the 10 person per building and 50 person, but if you look at the guidelines for like a retail establishment, and then you multiply that by your square footage, like our number is quite large for our building size. So I know we're not a retail, but we're also, I think we maybe can talk more about that, but we're also a government entity that can kind of make up our own rules. So I know that makes it gray, but
Yeah,
my goal, sorry.
that would be another way to look at that. And it might allow us to allow a few more people in. I'm trying to go as slow and steady as possible and make sure that my staff feels safe. I do have some vulnerable staff. So I'm looking at it as a gathering, but yeah, I could look at us and pretend we're retail and do it that way. That's one of those areas where there's no legal guidance for us.
Yeah,
Well,
and I think it's fluid also. That's why I liked pushing that to a July conversation anyway.
So if I might interject here on that.
Good.
So we will be looking at issuing something from guidance from our legal counsel and from looking at the governor's legal counsel, exactly what that maximum capacity limit might look like, and be getting that out to libraries. And again, when I say maximum, because a local decision might be very different that you wish to constrict that further. But it will be based very much on what you see in the new Restore Illinois plans for retail establishments, because effective tomorrow, all retail is to be, or that was the plan, all retail would be treated the same. It's not essential, non-essential anymore. It's simply retailer. That's our understanding at the moment, certainly subject to change. So more guidance would be forthcoming about that. So I'm reading comments in the chat and then what Amy and Diana both said, but certainly in no way is that a mandate that you must open with this maximum capacity. It's certainly libraries could restrict that further. So that will be forthcoming.
Now, Greg, since I have you, and I don't know if this will be covered in there too, I know that a lot of our libraries have voiced concerns about, you know, say that they want to have people wear masks. How much power do they have to really enforce that? Do you have an opinion on that?
I wish I had a better answer on that. I mean, our doors certainly do say that admittance is with a mask and 6-foot social distancing. That truly is an issue right now.
Yeah, I know that there's been violence in some places too that definitely kind of discourages you from pushing the issue too far, but if you want to make sure your staff is safe and your community is safe, it's kind of hard. And I know some people, you know, don't have issues of some kind where they can't wear a mask. And, you know, I know that you can't ask them why they're not wearing a mask in case, you know, and I know there's also some people who say, well, we want to check people's temperatures before they enter. I know we can't do that either. You can do that with your own staff, I think, but you can't do that with the public. Am I correct on those assumptions?
I think that's fairly correct in that statement. We will have a mandatory mask requirement for staff. We are hoping for compliance with the public on that issue as they enter the building. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I guess my big question for all of you is kind of like, what do you see happening when we finally get to 5? How are library services going to change? I know that we've been so involved in the day-to-day stuff, just, keeping our staff engaged and worrying about all of this stuff and keeping our public informed and happy. But it's like, if you could just, I don't even know if you've had the time to think about it, but if you could share your visions. Since you're on here, Greg, I'm going to ask you first, if that's okay.
Repeat that one more time, Anna. I'm sorry.
Well, how do you envision? Do you envision any changes to library service or the way people perceive us once we actually get to the stage where we're open business? Might have or may change.
I'm sorry, that totally cut out. I'm sorry.
Let me do sign language, interpretive. Okay. No, what do you see changes coming down when we finally reopen? How do you think things may change for either services or perceptions of libraries?
Oh gosh, I certainly think that, from the comments we've received on people wanting service from our organization, you truly are wanted and needed maybe more than ever right now. So I think it's all really quite positive. Certainly the way we interact with the public, that's going to change for all of us. I don't know that any of us sees that fully yet until we all understand the whole science of this situation that we're in. So there will certainly be some differences, but I do believe it's positive, and I think there's great need right now. When we've seen the nature of what has been done within Heartland and registration of new patrons for ebooks, that statistic was staggering. It was a 200% increase at one time, and it's probably higher now. So there's certainly significant need on the part of the residents of Illinois for these library services. I think it's going to be very, very favorable.
Thank you. Bobby, what do you envision happening?
So some of the things that we've started because of the pandemic, I see continuing. Obviously, we've gone more into the digital sphere with online programming. We've started a podcast with issuing digital cards for patrons to access digital resources. And I really see that continuing, more of a meeting patrons where they are, rather expecting them to always come into the building. So that's where I see a lot of change. But based on our reception to curbside checkout and people driving by the library to see if we're open, I think a lot of people also just want a physical space again. They want to be able to come into a building. They know our staff. They want to be able to talk face-to-face with someone again. So I think when we first open our building, it's going to be big just because it's familiar, it's comfortable, and it's not virtual. So I know those two things sound like oxymoron of more digital and more physical, but that's just kind of how I see it playing out.
Okay, thank you. I've gotten a word from Ellen that, we need to kind of wrap things up, but I still want to hear from Diana and Amy on this topic too. So if you guys could just give us a brief comment, I'd appreciate it. Diana, you want to go first?
I agree with what Greg said. I think that we're just as important, if not more important than ever. And I have found that people have been less pushy and more forgiving and more open and more grateful than I would have expected them to be when the library doors were open and we were only offering virtual services. But I think that people understand that this isn't just their library. The first day that we closed, I had somebody leave a voicemail message like, well, I'm shocked. I didn't know anything about this. And then I had called her back the next day and I said, so now you know it's the whole world, right? She said, yes. So hopefully we'll continue to be blessed in that way. We are the most trusted institutions in America, so.
Okay, great. Thank you, Diana. Amy?
Well, we should have ended with that. That was much a lovely ending. I would agree with everyone ahead of me. I'll just say that I've already had to prepare our budget for the next year. I'm sure a lot of you have as well, and you know how difficult that is with knowing very little about when funding will come in many different avenues. But the thing that I wanted to focus on is, as Bobby said, that digital component. So we're increasing more of our digital needs, but also making sure that we're aware of the print and physical need of the building and of programming, whatever that means, as well. So you're kind of having to bridge the people that are anxious and wanting to come back and have that community space, as Bobby said, but also those that are not going to be back for months and months and months after we open because of the fear or anything that they might have that might prevent them from doing so. So you're kind of having to bridge even more of that divide that's happening out there as much as we possibly can with our resources, and meet them where they are, wherever they are. So.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your comments. There's lots of things going on in the message areas that we can probably address at a later time. I'm going to turn it back over to Ellen so she can help wind this up. Again, thank you all for your participation. Ellen?
Thanks, Anna. And I hate to be the timekeeper. We knew that there would be an awful lot of good information shared during this slot. So if we keep you an extra 10 minutes, please be patient with us. We surveyed you last week about some of your reopening plans. And Shandy Greff-Penrod, our marketing coordinator, is going to share a little overview of that with you. And the link to the SurveyMonkey results are also on the L2 page. And before Shandy starts, I'm just going to say really quickly, lots of people and lots of organizations are looking for input from member libraries about what's going on. So we will be reaching out to you through delivery, through share, through a grassroots effort, to ask you for information about your reopening plans and how you're doing it. Please be generous if you've answered the same question in 4 different areas. Please bear with us, because all of this information gathering is designed to provide you with the best support we can. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Shandy.
All right, hello. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. All right. See if I've got the right screen shared. Can you guys all see my mouse moving around survey results? Okay, so first I want to say my name is Shandy Greff-Penrod and I'm the marketing coordinator. So I helped out with the survey and I put together a little synopsis for you guys. The point of this survey was to learn what public libraries are generally doing, as a whole, to help us make some of our decision making, such as when to resume different aspects of delivery, also to answer some of the questions that you guys have been asking us, as well as hopefully to help you guys make some of your decisions. So this link to the survey results I put in the chat. Also, the link is listed in the event page on L2. However, it wouldn't let me actually upload a shortcut or a direct link. So it looks like it's a file. Ignore the file link. Right below it in the description, I put the link to the survey, which again, I've also shared in the chat. So we surveyed public libraries at this particular time. We'll address academic libraries at a little bit of a later date. And the link to these results will go on our webpage on the COVID-19 resources later today as well. So anyway, we surveyed public libraries from May 13th to 21st. Survey sent by email. It was included in our newsletter and it was promoted during our director's chats, and we got 137 responses. So not everyone answered every question because we did not require questions to be answered. And we felt that was important because we knew, depending on people's answers, the survey could potentially be lengthy, and we, for some people, it's better to get some of the data than none of the data. So as you go through this, you will see that the number of people who answered the questions will be a little different, but that's why. So libraries were asked to provide their answers about their plans or their best predictions. So if a plan wasn't made, or if they just weren't sure what they were going to do, tell us what you think you're going to do. However, we did also include an undecided or unclear option to account for the respondents who just had no idea, just couldn't yet see what their library was going to do and how that they were going to proceed. So first, we asked if their library had drafted a reopening and pandemic plan, a pandemic plan for people who libraries that did not close their doors. At that time, a little over half had said yes, a little under half had not. When we asked about the reopening date, the vast majority, well, I shouldn't say vast majority, right around half said that they were opening next Monday. So we hope that's useful. 17% were opening sometime in May, 24% or so on some other day in June, and there were a handful of libraries who were deciding to stay closed, or at least their doors to stay closed through July or August. Oh, I should also say we asked for the reopening to consider reopening as something beyond virtual services. So a curbside was considered a form of reopening for this survey. About how libraries were preparing collections for circulation. We specifically asked about quarantine times and wiping the outside of the items. About 2/3 of libraries did say they would be wiping the outsides of their items, or at least that's what they anticipated doing. Most libraries said they were quarantining for a certain period of time, and the majority of those said it was going to be around 3 to 4 days. Additionally, some of the other, there were multiple responses in the other option about spraying the materials with disinfectant. So maybe not wiping them down, but maybe spraying with a Lysol or something like that. Ooh. So regarding, oh, let me fix that there. Okay, so regarding making technology available to patrons, of those that had computers or video games or video game systems, tablets, that sort of thing, most of them planned in some sort of way to make those available to patrons, either through 45% or so for extended Wi-Fi services, 73.8 or so percent, just making sure the use of their technology was 6 or more feet apart. That might be actually taking their computers that are in a line and spreading them outward so that there's more space in between computers. That also might mean if there's 5 computers in a row and there isn't, room to space them out more, maybe using, not using those middle 3 and just using those then 2. Other responses included continuing the pre-existing extended Wi-Fi services, hotspot lending, including acquiring additional hotspots for lending, checking out devices for patrons to take home, but also checking out devices just for people to use curbside and then to return. Altered time limits for computers, fewer available time slots so that there would be time for disinfecting the computers, et cetera, between patrons, as well as only as restricting the computer use for essential use only. So making sure people are not playing games on them, but they can use them for job searching or filing for unemployment and that sort of thing. About 19% of libraries said that they did plan to charge for COVID-related lost items. So if, my husband lost the video game that he's had for, 2+ months now, they would be charging for that. But another 23.5% or so said no, they would not be charging for those items. 14% or so of libraries have reported experiencing layoffs or furloughs. Another 21% said they had not yet, but it was still a possibility. And nearly 65% said there had not been any layoffs or furloughs and they did not see it happening in the foreseeable future. Libraries also have the option to implement rules for patrons, which kind of gets along with the questions in the chat, like, are you going to require patrons to wear masks? Can that be enforced? That sort of thing. 61% did plan to require patrons to wear a face mask. 40% actually said patrons must use hand sanitizer upon entering the building. Now, we did not go into any specifics, so we did not ask if they refuse, how will that be addressed? That is not, I think the intent here is to try to get patrons to use hand sanitizer, but the enforcement is not specifically addressed here. Also, libraries, nearly 75% of libraries plan to restrict the number of patrons in the building at a time. And there were other comments, including temporarily restricting food and drink, staggered entry in the building, one-way aisles, no lingering, like a strict in and out policy, the capability to visit the circulation desk, but marking off the stacks, temporarily restricting the use of games, gaming systems, computers, that sort of thing, and other reminders for social distancing, whether that be marks on the floor or signs. Board meetings, 43.4% of responding libraries said they were holding their board meetings virtually, 20.8% suspending, 16% in person, and 19.8% a combination of virtually and in person, which might include, let's say we've deemed this a necessity, so maybe we'll allow a certain, like the executive committee in the building, and other people have to attend virtually, or having the option, just any combination of those two. So in the reopening plan, when will your library be prepared to participate in interlibrary loan? So this was just a general idea for us because everyone's stages are different, the timings of the stages are different, the number of stages are different, but basically the majority, nearly half of people said of libraries reported somewhere in their middle stages, they'd be ready for interlibrary loan. There was also a section that asked libraries to report what of these many services do you plan to provide in each of your stages. Now, again, this is a difficult section. This one has some disclaimers because, again, all libraries have different number of stages in their plans. The stages don't match up to the same dates, that sort of thing. So we really only want to look at this for general trends and insights and not specifics. So the graphs for these are not in the screen that I'm going to be showing you, but right here, I did include the link if you want to see them. Just remember that, because it may look like a trend is going up and then it dips at stage 6. Well, that could be because, many fewer libraries don't have that stage 6 in their plan. Maybe more libraries would have 4 stages than would have 6. So just keep all those things in mind when looking at it. But in general, we did find that between 2/3 and 3/4 of libraries plan to open their doors with reduced hours. The largest number of libraries will offer curbside delivery starting around stage 2, and then that will actually, it looks like the plan is for that to actually decrease. So as the library opens more, the curbside will go away at some libraries. Only 5% of libraries will have their stacks open in stage 1, but the rate does steadily increase, which makes sense. Home delivery is actually at its lowest in the early stages and then steadily increases. A quarter are offering extended e-resources in the early stages, and it does steadily decrease to about 1/10 or so in the late stages. Information services by phone remains steady. Exclusive hours for older adults and those with comorbidities actually jumped quite a bit from the early to the mid stages. And at least half of all responding libraries plan to offer virtual programming at some point, with the peak being in the early phases. So it looks like perhaps some of them will be doing away with those virtual programming options, but also that also means that several will be continuing to do that. And online patron and library card registration peaks in the early stages at about 2/5 and decreases in subsequent stages. I did not read all of those. I'm guessing I read about half of them, so you can go through that later. Other services that libraries mentioned that they were offering at one stage or another in their plan: curbside notary and printing services, sneeze guards, that should really be in the other category, touchless checkout, take-home information and activities, off-site computers. When interlibrary loan comes back, some of them do plan to limit the interlibrary loan. Other things include those sneeze guards I mentioned, tape marks and posters for social distancing reminders. There are 5-phase plan to coincide with the state's Restore Illinois 5-phase plan, removing all the seating, removing all the toys in the kids area, walk-up windows for summer reading, take-home projects, etc. State maximum occupancy guidelines enforced, and single entry and single exit doors. So again, this did not look at specifically what each individual library was doing. It looks at them as an aggregate, with the exception that we did give people an option to share their plans. So not all of them have been posted to our website, but several of them have, and the rest will be posted today. So if you go to our website, and are you hopefully still seeing, are you seeing our website now? Greg and Bobby, I can see your faces. Can you see them? Awesome. So if you go to our COVID-19 page, and then right here for resources for librarians, this is the page that we've been suspecting you guys have been using the most. If you go on this page, click on sample plans, and it'll jump you right down to these. So you'll see several of them that we have. There are several more to be added. They'll be added later today. At least one of these we've gotten an update for, and so we'll be switching that out. If you're interested in looking at some of the plans from other states, we have some of those here. And I also want to take this moment to remind people that if they are not receiving our emails, I have had a couple of reports from people not receiving emails from IHLS. And I want to say, especially because of the additional amount of emails that are going out in general by companies and organizations, these spam filters are filtering out more of them than they usually are. So make sure you check your junk mailbox, your spam mailbox. If you use Google, your promotions, make sure to look for us in there. If we end up in your junk in Outlook, you can just right click and mark not junk. And if you think you may have unsubscribed because you checked all those places, think maybe, just maybe I unsubscribed on accident, you can go ahead on our website, go to members, and then newsletters and listservs, and you can click the sign up button. When you re-sign up again, you can, if you're still signed up, it'll tell you. And then if you are unsubscribed, you can go ahead and pick whichever things you want to be subscribed to, whether it's just official business, or if you want other things like continuing education, advocacy, etc. And you can also sign up or re-sign up for share emails here too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shandy. That was wonderful. Does anyone have right now have any questions for Shandy? I know we're running a little bit over. I want to thank everyone who's presented and all of you who have stayed around with us. I like your staying power. I realize 2 hours plus is a really long time to sit down or hang out with any topic. So I do appreciate that. A reminder, this has been recorded. We will be sharing the recording as well as questions and answers and posting those as soon as possible. We'll also, send out a notice about that to let everybody know that it's now available. I don't see any questions. Perhaps everybody's getting ready to stretch their legs and get some fresh air. If the sun's still shining where you are, good for you. If not, go stretch your legs anyway, get some fresh air. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day. See you all later. Bye-bye.